Hello everyone, Phoenix Knight here. Welcome to the channel, and welcome to a new playthrough on the channel. Tonight we're playing in a time of history that I've never played in before in the board gaming world, as we're playing Western Front Ace by Compass Games. This is another game in the Night Fighter Ace series, but this one has us as a World War I pilot, which is a time of history I've never explored. I have heard about Vietnam, but I've been very hesitant about that as well. Tonight we're going to start exploring World War I. Of course, this is another game in the Gregory Smith series with a heavy narrative focus like The Hunters or a lot of other stuff that you've seen on the channel. So we're going to finish setting up a new pilot here. Then we're going to go for a couple sorties and see what I think of the game. Evening, Jay, you're just in time for me to finish setting up my pilot. So I do have a sortie log that I've got over here, and I've already got a gripe with this sortie log. I probably should have printed something new off, but you can see it's very glossy paper. It's almost like it's not quite a plastic. And you can also see that I was doing some testing with the ink on it when I unboxed this game a while back, and it definitely smudges in a way I don't like. So if I end up doing more with this game, I will be switching out the sortie log. So I'm using actual paper instead of this like regular computer paper, instead of this glossy paper that I already can't stand. And I want to see, at least for a consolation, it didn't bleed through. So that's something, I guess. Anyway, we've got our pilot set up. So the first thing we need to do is we need to roll the D20 to determine base and nationality, which I've got the base assignment table right here for that. So we're going to be rolling everything up randomly. So I need the D20 for that. Let's see what we get for a base assignment. And then I think after that, which also begins by choosing, selects an air type and our nationality. Okay. So we are rolling a 2. Which means our base is Le Hameau. We're going to be a British pilot. So I'll just make a note here. Great Britain, okay? So now we get a British. Unfortunately, we're not eligible to be in the British Royal Naval Air Service, so we're just a regular British pilot, which I've got the chart for that right here. I'll put that to the side for the time being. And now we have to choose a plane, right? Let's see, we choose being the pilot of a single aircraft. Yep, so choose an aircraft. Let's see, okay. So, blue circle on the outside with a red dot on the inside. So that's a French plane, also French. German, also German. Well, first let's find what planes I can actually pick from. Alright, a SPAD S-13, that's Newport. And we're starting at the start of the game, so I've got to have something that's available in September 1916. Let's see, a B-12 is something I can use, and it might be what I end up with. But let's see what other planes we have in here. There are a lot of planes in this box. Let's see if there's anything more for British planes that I can actually use. Bristol Fighter BF-2B isn't something I can use. Neither is the Bristol Fighter F-2A. Airco FE-8, that is something I can use as the Airco DH-2. June 1917, April 1917, also not usable. Let's see, German, Newport 23 for the British. Newport 17 is also an available choice. Sopwith triplane, but I think I can only be... Yeah, I'd have to be in the Royal Naval Air Service to be able to use that, so I can't. Okay. So yeah, those are our planes that we have to choose from. We have the Newport 17 to choose from. Not the Newport 23. The Airco FE8. The Airco DH2. BE12. And the BE12. Let's go with... I think we'll start with the Newport 17. I gotta find my pen here. And of course I managed to drop it on the floor. Newport 17. Okay, so what's next on... Well, I've been working on preparing the sortie sheet as I go. Start date is September 1916. Okay, aircraft mat setup display, which I will set that up right over here. You missed it. Why can't I be in the Royal Naval Air Service? Because I rolled on the base assignment table randomly, I rolled a 2. The British Royal Naval Air Service only comes up on a 1. So I could theoretically pick for it if I wanted to, but since I'm doing everything randomly and I rolled a 2, I'm based at Low Hemo and a British pilot. So that's why I can't be in the Royal Naval Air Service in this case. Like I said, I could pick for it, but since I'm doing everything randomly, I'm going to go with what the dice are telling me. And we've got the... Let's see, there should be a sheet to be able to name British pilots. I saw names for German pilots when I was setting up last night. Belgian, Italian... here we go. Okay, so we're going to roll as well on the British Empire pilot name chart. So let's see what we get here. This is a D66 roll. This will be APA style. So the black die will be our 10s and the white will be our 1s. So we'll roll first for the given name. Let's see, a 2-4 says will be Elwyn. Now I've got to be careful because because one of my long-standing names from World of Warcraft and my other MMORPG days is that actually starts very similar to that. So Elwyn, and we'll roll for a surname as well. 1-6, Elwyn Bowman. Well, to be honest, that's not the most offensive name that could have come up. I'm just looking at some of the names that could very easily have come up here. But not a terrible name to get. Elwyn Bowen. Or Bowman. Can work with that. Aircraft mat display. Place the plane marker in the hangar box. So I need to get a Newport 17 marker, which of course I didn't pull the... here we go. I'm going to have to lay these chits out off camera so I can sift through them, and there's a lot of them to go through. Let's see, I'm looking for Newport 17 British. That'll work. So now we need to find... There's supposed to be a hangar space here. Oh, hangar, right here. Okay. I'll bag the rest of those up. Let's see if there are chits for the bases as well. There probably are chits for the bases. Ranks. Surprisingly, no. There aren't any ranks or any chits for the bases. Okay, well, we can work with that, I guess. Place the plane type, place the wingman. We don't have a wingman. Place a good luck charm, which those are medals. Are there any type of good luck charms Actually, wait a second. These might be the bases. I think these might be the missions. Well, we'll set up a current endurance chit now that we've got that. Now that we've actually got a plane. Yeah, these look like the missions. Yeah. So we can grab a current location as well. Let's see if there's a space here. Le Hemo right here as our current location. And I didn't see a good luck charm when I was looking for those in here. Unless it's a medal, potentially. Well, worth a shot, I guess. Unless... Nope, those look like skills. I will need weather out, though. More training stuff. Nope. Go ahead and lay out the medals separately as well, but I don't think we're going to find anything there. Okay, so never mind that. Alright, place a good luck charm, place the appropriate ammo, which we've got 3 ammo for our machine guns. So we'll grab three singles, since that's usually a little bit easier for me to keep track of. There we are. As Magnus joins us here as well while I'm setting everything up. We've got the ammo markers, any skill markers. We'll get to flight school for that in a minute. I've already done ammunition. We don't have any Lewis. Actually, we do have Lewis drums, so I'll get 2 of those. So I got 2 Lewis drums out as well. Okay. Or not ammo per se, okay. Basing, I've already set up the base. Changing bases, so now we're going to flight school. So first we're going to go through the training evolutions. So we'll start off with gunnery training first, where we'll flip 3 combat cards using the 2 firepower column. If one is a 4-5 or a DE result, place the gunnery -1 marker on the pilot status chart, which means the gunnery skill will cost 1 less experience to purchase. Let me see if I can find... Actually, I wonder if these are the good luck markers. We'll go with touch wood, I guess. That seems like it would be most likely. So we'll get our training markers all handy here. ACM -1 and stamina. Oh, we need landing as well potentially. So I'll grab that. Here's landing. Okay. So we've got gunnery training. I've got the combat deck right here. I'll give this a quick shuffle so that you guys don't think I'm up to any kind of shenanigans here. And yes, I did sleeve it, just to make shuffling a lot easier. And of course, given that this is still very early in these sleeves being used, they're not wanting to shuffle as cleanly as I would like. Okay. So now we're flipping 3 combat cards using the 2 flight point or flight firepower column. We need to see a 4-5 or a DE. So first up, 2 is a 4, so that gives us the gunnery skill. So gunnery, where does that go? On the pilot status chart, which is of course up over on this side. Which actually I can pull the Italian front out of shot, since it doesn't look like I will be flying out of the Italian front. So I can bring training, so I can put gunnery down there. I'm just going to make some notes in my logbook as well. Western Front ace for Elwyn Bowman. Technically, I think you'd probably flip the other two cards, but I'm not going to bother since the first one came up as a 4. Next up, we've got flight training to go through. Actually, that's gunnery. So now we've got flight training, and this one is a 2d6 roll. 9 to 12 is a success. That's a 7, so flight training failed. And we've got landing training. Which for this one, we have to roll 3 times on chart B7, which is right here. And we've got a +2 training modifier. If none are rough landings, we get the landing skill for free. Which the landing skill means the landing roll gives us a -1 dice roll modifier. So a +2 means we want to see low rolls. Our first roll is a 10 to a 12, which is just barely a safe landing. So a little bit lower on the roll, please. That's a 6 + 2 is 8, so we're still good. One more. 5 + 2 is 7, so that means landing training was a success. So we get the landing skill for free, which that will also go up over there. And we're not using an ace, so I'm not worried about that. So we didn't get the ACM skill. That's unfortunate, but nothing we can do there. So now for our last part of flight school, actually I want that to stay close. So for our last part of flight school, now we get a spare time activity. We can go for physical training, which would give us the stamina marker to downgrade a KIA or a serious wound. Extra study time to spend their spare time learning all they can about the aircraft, gain 1 extra experience point, or extra carousing. Spends his spare time at the local off-base bars with friends because life is short. Bar fight earns him a prestige level of 1 and 1 prestige point, but a +1 DRM on his first promotion roll. I think we're going to go with the extra physical training because the 1 stamina could be very useful. Okay, so the stamina goes on the pilot wound status box. So that goes there we go. Pilot wound status. Okay, so we've got stamina there. So that gives me 1 experience point, which I'll put that on the pilot status chart now that we've actually finished. There we go. Now that we've actually finished flight school, so now we're ready to fly. And this will be our first mission, so now I no longer need the flight points chart. So, ending the game, yada, yada, yada. So actually we're going to use the prepare for play. Actually, we're going to use the mission cards. So at the start of each month, we place or remove major offensive markers, and we're starting with the offensive in Somme for September 1916 through, what is that, November 1916. Let's see. Where is that offensive? It is not wanting to cooperate here. Oh, here we go. Some. No wonder I can't find it. Alright, so that is our current offensive. So we roll 1d6 for the number of contact patrols at the start of each month. Gameplay outline, check to see number of contacts, okay? So we're going to have 5 contact sorties in the month of September. or five contact patrols. Okay, so now we're rolling on, where's chart A1? That's encounters, which I'll need later. Ah, here we go, mission assignment. Okay. Right, so 5 for the month. So now we're rolling on chart A1 for our assigned mission. Since we're in 1916, we need our 1916 chart. So this is September 1916 chart, patrol 1. So our first patrol, as Troy Sawyer now joins us here as well. We're just about to roll for our first patrol. That's Snake Eyes, which we are balloon busting. And balloon busting is traveling to no man's land and conducting an attack against an enemy balloon. Okay. So move to takeoff box, which I've got that there. And now we're rolling for, so we take off, move to takeoff box, move endurance marker, which I've done that. So now we're rolling for an encounter in the takeoff box, which means we are currently all right, I'm just going to get my cards all laid out here because I'm following the sequence of play here very carefully. Let's see. So we've got the mission start, roll for an encounter in the takeoff box. We're probably still over 1916 British fighters, so this is what we... Wait. Oh, here we go. Encounter chart. This is what we'd be rolling. So we're rolling on friendly lines. So friendly lines. I didn't see there being a separate... Oh, wait a second. Yeah. Oh, wait a second. Let me just look at something here. Let me choose to volunteer for a balloon busting. Okay, to any adjacent area. Okay. Alright, so rolling for our encounter. That's an 8, which means we've got nothing over Allied lines. Okay. So actually that was over base. So now we're moving into our current endurance, and now we're over friendly territory. So we're still over friendly lines. So we're rolling again, and I've already moved the endurance. A 5. Uh-oh, this time we've got a fighter coming at us. Double asterisk means no encounter in Italy. We've got a fighter, though. So we have an encounter, which means we go to card 3. So we're rolling an A3. We're rolling for a German fighter. So let's see what we've got here. Okay. So we're rolling 2d6 again. That's an 8, which means we've got an Albatross D1 coming at us. And I assume there's a targeting for those. Miscellaneous die rolls, that's not what I want. Two-seater mat. I just need to separate some of these out. Usually I'm a little bit more prepared than this, but I'm also doing this. I'm also doing a bit more learning of these games on the fly. let's see, Austria-Hungary status, Germany, Italy, US pilot status. There should be I'm looking for a targeting mat for when we're fighting something. I saw a two-seater in here, but those are, we need a fighter chart. Is there seriously not a French status, Belgian status? Is there seriously not a... Huh. Just so you guys don't wonder if I've gone mental, let me show you what I'm talking about. So they've got a two-seater mat in here, which presumably is what you'd use when you're attacking the enemy. But of course we're against a fighter here. And on the back of this is a reference for miscellaneous die rolls. So unless I've gone completely crazy, there doesn't seem to be something similar for... There doesn't seem to be something similar for when you're... For when you're against the... for when you're against a fighter. That's the Royal Naval Air Service. Well, take care of yourself, Magnus. No need to stay awake on my account. If you need to go get some sleep, go for it. I'm probably gonna be cussing and swearing with this for a little while I figure out where in the world that extra. While I figure out where in the world that other mat got laid out. Because this is actually kind of driving me nuts now. We've got charts for where the enemies fell. Squadron assignments. But nothing for... Okay, this is really irritating me now. Because I've got all the encounter charts I need. But I don't see anything... I don't see anything here for the fighters, which is actually really annoying. Unless I just grab an enemy fighter, unless I just grab a normal fighter. Which I suppose is possible. But... yeah, I feel like that's something they should have included with the game, and I'm just now realizing that they didn't. So yeah, I think for the time being, since I'm looking for a fighter, I'm just going to grab the enemy fighter. What am I looking for? An Albatross D1. See, that's a D2, Albatross D1. Here we go. Okay. That's actually really annoying. So we'll bring that in. Okay. So that's what we've got there. We roll for the starting orientation next, which my luck, I probably just had the chart in my hand that I needed for that. It's B1 I'm looking for. Wow. I apologize, guys. I'm normally not nearly this scatterbrained. B1, here we go. So our starting orientation. And of course I I do want to lay out my chits here. Let's see, so I need an Albatross D1 for the Germans. Okay, and I'll get another marker so I can use that to track me for the time being. We've got player, enemy, so I need to roll for starting orientation, which I'm rolling on B1 for that. So a 9 Enemy starts advantaged. That's not good. Which, if I remember air combat correctly, that means they start... Let's see, so enemy advantaged means they start... They basically start with... So they start something like that. Okay, so we've got... Actually, let me bring the mat in shot. I'm going to try to move this cable from my camera light out of the way. So the enemy's starting advantaged against us, which means they're crossing our, actually, I was going to say they're crossing our T, but I think that's the other way around. We're crossing their T, so we're basically flying and they're flanking at us. So if we look at the pen as where I'm at, essentially, I'm flying in a side-by-side, they're coming perpendicular at us like so. That is a very bad spot for me to be in right now. Okay. So now we conduct combat, and since we're starting disadvantaged, we are very much... So we're disadvantaged here, which means we are going to have to try some kind of defensive fire. So we're disadvantaged. We can choose to go defensive by using the defense option on the card we flip. We don't have a wingman, so I'm just going to go defensive. So let's see what happens when we flip our card for that. Actually, we'll pull this over here, and we'll flip a combat card to see what happens when we go defensive. When we go defensive, we do a half loop, so we improve to trailing. Wingman can assist. Okay, so if he's not present... Alright, if those are true, you can only use the defense option of the card while disadvantaged or tailed. Okay, so we do a half loop and improve to trailing. So improve to trailing, which means now we're going to suddenly improve to trailing. So if we're disadvantaged, we improve to... So let's say, if I improve to trailing, we don't just turn to tail here. So I think we probably just turn improve to trailing. Seems like it's like that. No, that wouldn't be right. So let me check the errata. Maybe there's something in there that'll make it a little bit clearer. Chart. Not on any of the charts here. Okay, of course not. Right. So current endurance moved down for that. Half loop means we improve to trailing, so I'm still trying to figure out what that is. If both the player subtract the two values, move the higher numbered plane is that position. So we do improve. I don't think we end up tailing though, so we probably end up head on. And I'm already kind of getting turned off a little bit with having to bring in the plane orientation, because that was one thing I didn't like from Interceptor Ace. So we improved to trailing. We still have to flip a card for the... Okay. So we have to flip a... So we flip a second card, and the... So we flip another card to get the firepower. The firepower from that is from the enemy fighter. So which card do we use from that from the enemy fighter? That the enemy fighter uses if he is defensive is the defensive text. The enemy fighter will shoot with the offensive top section. Okay, so the Albatross has a firepower of a 4. So we flip this card over, and we find a 4 is 4 hits. So we roll 4 hits. Which you'll recognize these if you played any of these hunter games. So we're going to roll. So we're going to roll on B6 for our damage chart. That is going to land on a 13 finally. Starboard strut gets hit, which, yep, we've got starboard struts. So we'll get a damaged marker for that. That could be problematic. So let's see what our next hit is here. .22 is a canvas hit. Which, oh, we don't have canvas here. Hey, look at that. That's essentially a no damage roll. So that's very welcome. Next hit, 61. That's a tail hit. And our last hit, 26, is another canvas hit. So, no effect. Okay, so now for all rounds, firing is simultaneous. Any changes in orientation. So now we roll for the initiative. We'll roll black for the Germans, white for us. So both aircraft roll. Alright, that's a 3 and a 5, so we actually gain 2 positions. Which means now... So we gain 2 positions, which now means we're going to end up tailing. Which is very welcome for us. Tailing on initiative roll. Okay, so now it looks like we go back to the start of the round. Okay, so we're on a... We get a mission out here for balloon busting, since that's what we're on in this case. That's our current mission. Alright. So now we end up with... So they are defensive at this point. So to begin combat, we're tailing this time, so now we get the option of firing. Right, so we're tailing, which means we have a choice to fire. So I will... If we're facing the aircraft either head-on or advantaged, or we're tailing here, the enemy will fire back. Okay, so we are going to fire using our 2 firepower. So here we find. So 2 will give us 3 hits, which I'll roll for those in a second. And then defensive, when they're tailed, if they're defensive, they're being tailed. Okay, so the defensive text section of the card. So the defensive section for them is a barrel roll, so they'll avoid 2 hits, which means we only get 1 hit out of that. So we'll roll for more fighter damage to them. Which brings us right back to the fighter damage chart. That's a 36, which in this case, that's a controls hit. Which means they have no agility to speak of at this point. So that's 1 hit on the agility. Then we go for... Okay, at the end of each round of combat, which we did that, so that was controls. And then defensive, they got a barrel roll. So our next initiative roll, which will roll the same way. No change. So that's fortunate for us, which means we get to stay on the offense. And I did use 2 ammo, by the way. So I'm probably going to put this thing down after this round of combat. So with 2 firepower, we get 2 hits on that. And then the defensive for them, since they're still tailed, is Chandel. Yikes. Avoid all damage and improve by 1. And times 2 if rotary engine, which they do not have a rotary engine. So they avoid all damage and improve by 1. So they're going to improve... Actually, if they're tailed, they're going to improve to advantaged. Yikes. So... avoid all damage and improve by 1. That's rather unfortunate. Alright, so now we roll initiative again. Still no change. Alright. And we don't burn endurance while we're in the middle of an encounter. It doesn't look like, I don't think. No. Alright, well, we're going to go offensive once again, so we are out of ammo at this point. Which means if we can load we'll probably have to use the Lewis gun here. So we're going offensive again. Which means we'll flip a card. We will find another 2 hits. We'll see if we can get any of those hits to go through. We will find another barrel roll. Are you kidding me? So now I think we're going to want to try to break off from combat at this point. So the question is, how do we do that? Or do we? Reloading the... So a barrel roll. Let's see, now I'm trying to figure out how I can break off combat at this point. Actually, can I reload that? Must have a spare drum available. Is that no other action can be taken that round? Okay, so since we are tailed, we are going to use a Lewis drum here to reload. But unfortunately, we don't get to attack. They do get to flip over a defensive card, though. So let's see what they find here. They avoid a hit and improve by 1. So now they're back to head-on. Alright. Reload. Improve by 1. Alright, we roll for initiative again. Alright, so we improve by 1 once again. We go right back to being advantaged. So, improve by 1, which means we get to fire again, which we will do. We're trying to shoot this bird down. So we'll flip over another card. Actually, there's got to be a way to break off combat short of shooting them all down. Due to lack of offensive capability, the encounter automatically ends. So there's got to be a way to break off automatically when you'll want to disengage. Okay, so it looks like... Okay, we'll attempt to engage if its pilot is wounded, has all forward. Okay. Advantaged against you. Okay, so it looks like we can break off automatically. So we are going to try to fire again using 2 offensive firepower. We get 4 hits this time. Let's see what they flip over for a card. Tight turn, improved by 1, improved by 2 if rotary engine. So they're going to improve to head on, but we get the 4 hits this time. Let's see if we can put this thing down finally. So back to fighter damage. Let's see, a 36 is a controls hit. 1 more controls hit and we knock it down. Actually, never mind, we just knock it down now. We'll roll for the other 3 hits just for grins. 56 is rear guns, which I don't think that plane had. No. Looks like the Albatross didn't have rear guns. So that would be minor damage. 35 is a port strut. And 54 is landing gear. So they were definitely not getting this plane down on the ground. So that's it for us, and we're done with the mission. So now we're in no man's land, which this is where we need to be. So no man's land is where we need to be when we're balloon busting. Alright, so going balloon busting requires me to fly to no man's land, which we did. Okay, due to their dangerous balloons, award double credit if you make at least 1 attempt. Okay, so now how do we do the balloon busting? Let's see. Okay, so it requires me to fly into no man's land. If on a balloon busting mission, yep. Okay, so we roll for AA, which is a 1d6 roll. On a 1 to 3, we take 1d6 random hits. So we'll use both dice. We'll use black to determine if we take damage, white to determine how many hits we take. We want the black die to be high. So of course it's a 1 and we're taking 3 hits. So we'll roll for 3 fighter hits. $56 rear guns, which we don't have. $43 rear guns, which again we don't have. And 16 fuel tank. Uh-oh, that one's going to be a problem. I almost forgot to mark an endurance off, but our fuel tank will cause problems. Oop. Now I want a damaged ship, not an inoperable. So yeah, fuel tank is highly problematic. Okay, take AA, then attack it by flipping a card. Requires a result of 3 or more to down the balloon. Okay, so we've got 2 firepower. So let's see what we get here. We get 3 firepower, so we knock the balloon down, right? Yep, we down the balloon. And then we automatically take anti-air. So let's see how many we take after downing the balloon. We take 1 hit. Hopefully this isn't going to be too dangerous. I wouldn't mind a couple more of those rear gun hits, since they effectively do nothing. 23. Uh-oh. That's an engine hit. So now I definitely want to make a... Now I think I want to make a beeline for base at this point. Yeah. So now that the mission's done, now we can... Let's see if an encounter happens. Return to card 2. Alright, so yeah. Now I think we want to make a beeline for home. So so how does that work? Do we just turn tail and do we just go straight back to the base, or do we have to work our way back? Repeat moving to the right and moving your aircraft. After rolling for a possible final encounter in your base box. Okay, so it looks like you move back to your starting airfield and land. That still doesn't tell me if I am going to have to move all the way, if I'm going to have to go back. Maybe the example of play will tell me something about that, because what I'm trying to do is figure out if I need to go all the way back, because I know in other games in this world, you usually have to go all the way back. So let me see if I can find out about that. Hopefully there's an example of play here. Traveling backwards on the mission track. Okay, so we do have to turn around. So that means we're having another encounter in friendly territory. Where are my encounters? Here we go. Encounter chart. Hopefully we get nothing here. That's a 9, which is nothing. And then friendly territory 3, which is basically considered takeoff and landing. So we roll for an encounter here, and then we're going to try to put this bird down. That's a 6, which is nothing. So now we roll for landing. We start off by rolling for landing weather, which where is the chart for that one? Right here. That's a D10 roll. Landing weather 5 is good weather. And now we make the actual landing roll, which is a 2d6 roll minus 1 because we have the landing skill. 12 minus 1 is 11, so that's barely a safe landing. So very nicely done there. So we land on the ground, gain XP if allowed. We gain... So how much experience do we gain for that? Okay, checks the rules to see if he's eligible. Let's see, 8.2.20. Oh, that's British awards. Okay, we've been wounded. Mentioned in dispatches. So yeah, we do achieve a victory. Mentioned in dispatches, which is 1 prestige point. Let's see if there's anything else I'm eligible for. We're downing 2 aircraft in a single sortie. No. No. No and no. Okay, so we do get mentioned in dispatches, which gives me another prestige point, bringing me up to... Actually, that's my first prestige point. Okay, post-combat... Okay, yeah, so we do have to... Okay. Right, aircraft not lost. We rolled for emergency landing. We didn't have anything crazy happen there. And we get... I believe we get experience for... Counts as 2 sorties flown. Probably because of how dangerous they were. Okay, so... Pilots always receive mission credit if they engage in enemy aircraft or are engaged on a sortie. Now the question is, do I get experience out of that? I'm pretty sure the answer there is yes. Actually, let me go back to the whatchacall again. Prestige level, that's not what I want. Okay, so if we place the mention in dispatches. So it doesn't say anything about... Yep, it is touch wood for the British. That is the good luck charm. Okay, I wasn't sure about that. So it looks like... Expend endurance. Okay. And it looks like... Yeah, it looks like we don't actually gain... For every 4 contact patrols flown, gains an experience point. Okay, so we don't gain another experience point, but that'll do it for this playthrough of Western Front Ace. I'm going to call it a patrol there. Not bad for our first patrol, all things told. Seemed a little bit clunky at first, but I think some of that was probably just because I'm very much still learning this game. This is one I'm kind of a little bit hesitant on. I normally like a lot of these Greg Smith games, although to be fair, I have gotten rid of my Interceptor Ace games just because it had the plane orientation as well, that I wasn't necessarily completely fond of that in Interceptor Ace. That to me was a little bit confusing, so I'll probably do a little bit more with this game. I'll give it at least a little bit of time to percolate. I may do another mission of it, but it won't be immediately. Anyway, I'm starting to ramble now, so let's go ahead and wrap this video up. Tomorrow, Mystical Munchies will continue out of the Star Wars Life Day cookbook as we make the side Roshir Bramble. Wednesday, we'll finally have our rescheduled game of Arc Nova, and Monday we'll be continuing Metal Gear Mondays as we come back to trying to infiltrate Shadow Moses and Metal Gear Solid, the board game. Thank you for watching the video. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to turn on notifications so you get my content. Be well, stay safe, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and I'll be back with more videos in the future. Until then, take care everyone.